Okay, so I'm going to see if I can wrap this up in maybe one or two more just to get some data on the output and just complete the cycle. We've got our cytoplasm objects defined. We're going to get rid of this yellow one, and then we're going to try and export some results. So let's go ahead and we'll continue where we left off. Okay, so what we need to do is measure them. Before we can start to filter these objects, we need to measure them. So let's close that and bring in a measurement. And you can measure the images or the objects. A lot of times you want to make sure you've got the right one in the right place. I can often get confused with those some days. So let's measure object size and shape. Okay, and put that in the right place. Object size, shape at the bottom. That works. It has to be below the identification of the object such that it comes up in the list here. So we're going to measure the size of the cytoplasm object. And don't calculate the Zernike features, or however that's pronounced, unless you know what they are. Otherwise it takes a long time. So probably very powerful, never used them, never got into that kind of detail. And so we're just going to measure those, and it's straightforward to give us the measurements. So let's just step, identify the cells, there they are again, and we step and it just measures them. So we get a bunch of different measurements from the objects. Then we can look across the area here and see we've got the average area, mean, median, standard deviation of the area. We can use a different metric to get rid of them. Potentially use, for example, the major axis of the ellipse. If we looked at this one, it would have a very long major axis, or even maybe the perimeter would be a good identifier to kick some out. So let's just do area for now. And so, sorry, let's bring in a filter. So we've got object processing, and we can filter the objects on the end there. So we're going to filter our cytoplasm objects, and we're going to call them filter objects. I often name things, we can just throw away the vowels and have sort of to keep things from becoming too long. And so it's going to use measurements, and we'll do limits, and you can pick out the minimal or the maximal, and you can do a bunch of different options, and this is very flexible. Always good to read up on the help, as per usual. There's a help for the module here or here, and read up on the options and click all the help buttons. So throughout the entire thing, just keep clicking, and every time you use it, you'll learn a little, and I'm still learning each time I come back to it. So this time we're gonna do limits on the area, and you can go into different sections of the information that's available. And we're not going to do a minimum, but we're going to do a maximum. And we know the value from here is kind of 40,000 pixels, something like that. Let's have a look and see what number's going to fit best. I think I recall from playing around that 45,000 was a good one. And let's go ahead and step and filter our objects, and there we go, we filtered out the red one. And you have to empirically try it and just see which numbers worked best for that. So now we've got our 3 cytoplasm objects, and if that was of interest, we can go ahead and export those. So let's do that just as a final stage. We now want to measure maybe the intensity in those regions. So let's do another measurement. I'm going to measure object intensity. And now it's below my filtered objects, so I now have I should have my, the objects will be here. So this is the image, so we're going to take the image data, so we want to take the cytoplasm original data, always measure on the original, not the process ones from the top here when we did some of these processing stages. And we'll measure the filtered cytoplasm objects here, so just the green ones in this object image down here. And so that will go ahead and measure that part, so we can step on the filtering and step on the measurement there. And so we've got a bunch of different numbers from the intensity measurements. One thing you need to know on the standard settings for CellProfiler, the intensity measurements are given in terms of percentages of the maximum. So if your data is 8-bit, the maximum value is going to be 255, and it converts the values. Let's bring one up here. It converts the values here, and if you look down the bottom right, you'll see these ones here are fractions of the maximum available. A lot of microscopes use 12-bit data sets, and so that will be a maximum of 4095, and so that will be a fraction of 4095. Or some data sets are 16 bits, so it's going to be a fraction of 65,000. And so double check that. We can open it up in Fiji and look at the maximum values and the bit ranges and things like that, and just to make sure it makes sense. And so at the end, what you would do is whatever numbers you get out of the Excel sheet, you can just multiply that column by 255 or by 4095. Post in the comments if you have questions on how to pick that out and how to verify. It's nice to do a couple of things in Fiji as a sideline, just to give you some controls, just to verify that bit is roughly this kind of intensity or roughly this size, etc., etc. Make sure things work properly. Apologize, there we go. And so now at the end, what we want to do is add an export, and we want to save the data. So we have to come out of test mode to have save our data. I often use the export to spreadsheet. We'll throw it in there. One thing to watch out for is you make sure you define where it goes. You've got these default output and input folders, which you can define down here, and if it's just your machine all the time, then that's fine, but I often just use it elsewhere and I tell it where I'm going to go. So let me bring this, copy the folder in from here, and then we can just go straight in there and do it that way. And you can go through and read all the options here about the export. It's a long list, and if you just do the default, it will export everything, all measurement types and all settings, but often you can come in and select the measurements to export and go through, and in this window you can then pick, I just want the cytoplasm intensity, and then pick the different ones you want. It makes it a little neater. Sometimes it can be overwhelming, but you have all the information there, so it doesn't hurt. You can just pull that out of the Excel sheet and work with it independently. So I'd rather just save everything and be selective in my Excel work that way. So it's just export. Let me select and just export everything. See how that goes, and you can give it a prefix and do a bunch of other things to how that exports there. So we're going to run this and have a look. And if I do my analyze images, it's going to go through and process. You'll see the processing down here. It's going to be running a multiple of how many cores, how many threads you've got running. Sometimes you have multiple threads on your machine. You'll see it running like 8 at a time, for example, and it may just show you the first one of each 8 and then show you the number 9, and then it'll go through and show you the next one. And so you don't always see every image as it goes through. It's giving me a bunch of windows here that it's spitting out, and you can turn the eyes off on each individual one you don't want to see. If you're doing a batch thing, it speeds it up a little bit just to turn all the eyes off and let it do it in the background and see the output when it's finished. And you click OK, and when you're done, you've got the output here from the different things. Let's say we look at the filtered objects of the cytoplasm, the 3 we wanted, and then you've got, select all and double click, and we can break it up that way. And you've got all the different intensities and all the different measurements for the objects it's found. So it's going to give an image number for the first image it found, 3 different objects, and 3 different objects, 1, 2, 3 here, and in the second image it found 4 different objects here. And then you'll get the intensity. And again, these ones are fractional, so you need to times it by 255 or 4095, for example, to get the absolute numbers. Intensities are kind of arbitrary for most intents and purposes. It's just a number. So if you wanted to, you could just stick to fractional numbers and treat them as percentages, and that would work too. Okay, and so that's the quickest we can do to get through all the stages from start to finish. Import, some processing, identify objects, some measurements, and filtering, and then an export there. I'm going to do more detailed in each step. Send me some data, send me some requests. That will make things go faster, and I can get things to you on specific sections of this, and we'll go through some more as and when.